Hey everyone, and welcome back to IDEANTHRO Movement. On today's episode, delayed onset muscle soreness is not a badge of honor. So, delayed onset muscle soreness, otherwise known as DOMS, is a pretty well recognized phenomenon in the industry. What we're talking about is that feeling of muscular tiredness that typically peaks and gets worse about 1 to 2 days after really serious exertion, right? Either a serious training session or just going out in the real world and moving heaps, whatever it is the case, that soreness that you have after training that builds up and peaks between 1 to 2 days after training, hence the delayed element of it. In this particular video, we are going to talk about what I think is an over-glorification and a bit of a love affair that's very inappropriate that the traditional fitness industry has with DOMS. And we're going to use an analogy to explore, why do we get it? Because if we look at maybe why we might actually get delayed onset muscle soreness, then we can have a think about how we should be responding to it. Now, this episode, I'm choosing to make this now because just yesterday I saw a prominent Brisbane gym, a gym that's prominent on social media, make a post along the lines of saying, and by the way, when in this and future episodes I'm going to make reference to other facilities, you're going to see that I don't name them and don't call them out, because this isn't about shaming people. This is about discussing topics in this industry in an open format, right? So I'm choosing not to name people because I don't want this to accidentally turn into a, ha, you did such and such session. It's not that. But a gym that's prominent on social media made a post to the effect that they were doing something a little bit different in a session, the sort of thing that might have had their clients going, that's a little odd. It sounds like, compared to the traditional fitness industry, everything that we do at IDEANTHRO Movement. But they were doing stuff that was a little bit odd, and people could have been a bit like, oh, that's a little strange. Why are we doing this? But then they got a call or a text from the person literally like 2 hours after the session, and they were like, oh my goodness, my muscles are so sore. I can't believe it. I can't believe that simple little thing gave me such a good workout. I'm so sore. And the gym was saying, yeah, you should trust in the process. But hang on, let's back up a minute. There's an implicit assumption in here that being really sore after training is a good thing. Why would being sore after training, whether it's a couple of hours later or building up to full-blown DOMS a day or two later, why is that even a good thing? Let's use a little thought experiment here to explore what DOMS is and why it might be relevant. Why it might be something that our bodies do for us. So, what is DOMS? Like, what is literally going on? So if you might say, oh, like, what is it? People might say, oh, look, it's this soreness you feel after you've done this huge exertion and like your muscles have been worked really, really hard, and now they're kind of rebuilding and you've got this pain because of something that's going on in the muscles. Well, maybe, but let's just look at something else here for a second. For you to experience the soreness of delayed onset muscle soreness, it requires at least one thing, probably two things to be going on. What it definitely requires is for your nervous system and brain to experience the soreness, right? So there doesn't necessarily have to be a stimulus. Have you ever had that experience where you like think that you felt something on your shoulder and you look around and you're like, oh no. Well, in that situation, there's not necessarily actually something on your shoulder, but your nervous system told you, for whatever reason, maybe you got confused and your brain processed it wrong, and like there was some sort of stimulus and your brain got it confused. But your brain has chosen to recognize, oh yeah, there's something on my shoulder, right? So for you to perceive soreness, we probably need two things, which is we probably need there to be some sort of change happening in the muscle from being really worked really, really hard. But the thing that we definitely need, the second part of this, is we need our brain to choose to perceive that. Now, if you want to test this out, and I do not suggest you test this out, but this is a bit of kind of a joke that physios and chiropractors will talk about. You know, next time you're in a little bit of pain, if you want to stop that pain, I've got a really simple solution for you. Get a hammer and smack your hand with it. I guarantee you won't feel the original pain anymore, right? Because the brain, the nervous system and the brain has to choose to perceive the stimulus. And this is a really important point, because we can then separate two things that are going on here. We can then separate physiologically what might be happening in the muscle from the fact that our bodies have chosen to perceive what's going on in the muscle. Those are two very, very different things. And chosen to perceive it as soreness, not just chosen to perceive it as some kind of interesting feedback that says, hey, you've worked really hard, but actually chosen to perceive it in a way that limits our ability to do things. Because you saw, like, the soreness is like a break. You're going to feel that and be like, do I really want to train again right now? I'm kind of sore. Like, it's a braking force that potentially stops you from doing more. So, why would our bodies be choosing to perceive this soreness? Right? If there's nothing physiologically problematic with it, why on earth would your bodies be choosing to perceive it? Let's just dwell on that for a minute, right? What good is there in feeling sore after movement, after training, if it's not some kind of warning sign? What's the benefit? What's the benefit of feeling sore and feeling less likely to do more movement if it's not warning you about something? And this is my point here. If it was just a physiological effect, which is, oh, okay, my muscles have gotten tired and my muscles have gotten broken down and they're now repairing themselves, well, you don't necessarily need to perceive that, right? That can happen in the background. Every day, your body is constantly replacing and repairing everything about yourself. There's those old sayings that you hear along the lines of, oh, look, the body turns itself over. Sorry, my phone is ringing mid-episode. The body turns over all its tissues every so-and-so amount of time. And that depends. That varies with different organs within the body, different components of the body. But the point is, you don't perceive any of that change. I mean, you see your fingernails grow and you might see some old skin flake off at times. You see dust in your house, which is mainly old skin. But for the most part, you don't perceive that. You don't perceive your body as, when it's replacing the structure of your bone gradually over time. You don't perceive that as soreness or tiredness or anything. So physiological changes can happen in the body without you perceiving them. I would argue that the reason that we perceive DOMS, and this is the only reason that I can possibly think of, the reason that we perceive DOMS is because it's a warning sign. It's a sign that you've overdone it, right? And it's trying to apply this braking force to you to say, you know what? Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't do quite as much of that next time, right? And just think about this in an evolutionary context, which is one of the, again, another thought process that I like to apply to movement, is if DOMS makes you sore and less capable to do things the next day, like if DOMS is leaving you, oh, I'm really stiff, I can't just get up and run straight away, I got to stretch out, I got to move, oh, I got to really warm into this. If you think about our ancestors growing up on the plains of Africa, is that particularly useful? Like, is that really a thing that you want to have happen? No, you want to be, like all the other animals on the plains of Africa, able to jump up and go at a moment's notice. DOMS is a warning sign that you have overdone it. It's not a badge of honor. And that's a real misconception in the fitness industry. And this ties back into something we talked about a few episodes ago, albeit briefly, which is that one of the challenges for trainers, we talked about this tangentially to something else, to trainers in the fitness industry is demonstrating your efficacy. So trainers end up looking for ways, things like 12-week challenges, to try and demonstrate that their training's really effective for you. Because so many of the changes, so many benefits we're talking about are internal to the body, right? So we try and find ways to demonstrate things, and it can lead us astray. And this episode we're talking about, at least tangentially, why 12-week challenges and things it can be a little bit challenging. But DOMS is another example of this, where it is something you can actually perceive. So if you can create a link in people's mind between, I'm sore after training, I must have worked really hard and done a good thing, then it's easier for you as a trainer to be like, yeah, see how good I'm doing? I managed to make you sore. The problem is that making someone sore is probably not a good thing. That soreness is probably evolutionary, a warning sign that we've overdone it. Another way that we can look at this, I'm going to throw one more thing to look at you, for you to look at here. I can't look at you, I'm looking straight down the barrel of the camera. Another way to look at this though is from a training point of view. If you are really sore the next day, do you reckon it's limiting your capacity to do good work? Do you reckon it's limiting, if you're stiff and maybe you're struggling to get into good positions, is it limiting your capacity to do the best movement in the best possible positions, maybe even to go as hard and as fast or as heavy as you otherwise could? DOMS is one of these things where you get it because you worked beyond your capacity on one particular day and then you're sore for subsequent days, but then it limits your capacity in those subsequent days to train the way you otherwise would. You don't always perceive this because you often still perceive yourself as going very hard because the DOMS has beat you up, and so you feel stiff and tired and sore, and so you think you're going harder than you are. DOMS is one of these things where you get heaps of training on one day, but then it affects your ability to do quality work on the subsequent days. And it's for these reasons collectively, as I've discussed in this video, that we say very, very clearly that delayed onset muscle soreness or soreness after training is not a badge of honor and not something to be sought. Now, of course, occasionally we get this wrong, right? And in an episode or two's time, we'll talk about a situation where you sometimes can get, it's not a case of, oh my God, I got DOMS once this year, I ruined myself. This isn't what we're saying, but it's the badge of honor. It's the I should be sore after every session situation. That's a real misunderstanding of what this phenomenon is trying to tell us and teach us. DOMS is not a badge of honor, and you should be trying to avoid it as best you can if you are training for health and longevity. And this is one last point that I want to make here that I realize I've forgotten to raise in this video. Is that everything that we're talking about in this video is people training for health and fitness and capabilities in the real world as normal people. We are not talking about athletes. The problem with sport here is that if you want to be the best in the world or the best in your country, right? If we're talking about high level sports, this story could be a little bit different for the simple reason that everyone else that you're competing against wants that goal as well. So it becomes a case of who is prepared to put in the most work and push themselves hardest, even if you're severely compromising yourself in the process. If you're trying to be an elite athlete, it might well be the case that you need to, at least some of the time, go into that spot, or certainly more regularly than someone who's training for fitness, go into that spot where you do get muscle soreness the day after. Because if you don't, your competitors will. But the problem is you're making trade-offs when you do that with things like your long-term health. So if for everyday health and fitness, where we're just trying to be generally pretty good at a bunch of stuff, but not the best in the world and not trying to go for a race to the best in our particular sport, DOMS is not a badge of honor. It's not something we should be chasing. Okay, thank you for tuning in. That is the end of the episode. If you enjoyed this episode, if you found it interesting and thought-provoking, as I hope you did, by all means, give us a like or a subscribe. If you want to know more about what we do at IDEANTHRO Movement, you can go to IDEANTHRO.com/movement. If you're in Brisbane and want to come down to our facility in Oxley and maybe sign up, you can come down for a free trial at IDEANTHRO.com/free-trial. And if you just want to get in touch, maybe comment on this episode, maybe suggest something that we talk about in the future, you can go to IDEANTHRO.com/connect. Okie dokie, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.